Welcome everyone to the Helm intro, or where I'll give an introduction to Helm. So here's what we're going to cover, because I like to give a little up front. First, we're going to talk about what is Helm and why do you need it? Then we're going to get into where the Helm project is going, because Helm, as we'll talk about, is a package manager and what that means, but there's more to it than that. And so we're going to talk about what we've got, where we came from, where it's going, and how we got there. And then we're going to learn about Helm version 3. If anybody was in the keynote, I think they talked a little bit about it. Helm version 3 is the next major initiative. We're going to talk about where you can learn more about that. And of course, if you're interested in getting involved, you can learn more about how to get involved, whether it's for support or if you want to contribute to a fun open source project. But first, I'll let you know, hi, I'm Matt Farina. I am one of the Helm Matts. It's one of the jokes we have going. There's actually 3 Helm Matts. There's Matt Fisher, also known as Bacon Gobbler. If you look at the Helm CLI releases, you'll often see he's the person who did the release of those. He does lots of our release management, but he's one of the core developers. Then there's Matt Butcher, who is known as Technosophos. He is one of the co-founders of Helm, and he's done things like draft and a whole lot of other things over time. But he's the other Matt, and the 3 of us are the Matts. But the reality is, we are only 3 of more than 20 maintainers. There's a lot of people who put in their time and energy into core maintaining this because there's actually a lot to do, and there's a lot going on, and a lot that's useful to all of you. And we actually have room for more maintainers because we have so much work going on. And oh yeah, by the way, those maintainers are from 10 different companies. 10 different companies that are using Helm, that are invested in it, from more than, I think it's 400 companies that have contributed to Helm. And so we have a lot of contribution from a lot of places, and we are a very diverse group. So what is Helm? Helm is both a CNCF project and a package manager. And I call it a package manager that is, a method to easily share, consume, and those things. I'm actually going to break that down and why it's important in just a minute. And a CNCF project, it's really important that we're a CNCF project and how we came to be a CNCF project, because we're a newer CNCF project, even though we've been around for, well, years. Quite a number of years, actually. If you look at when Helm started, it started way back in, 2015. In October of 2015 as a project from a startup called SDS, or a small company called SDS. And it grew massively in popularity. And there was a project on the Google side as part of Kubernetes at the time, which was not even part of the CNCF yet, called Deployment Manager. And they decided to merge the 2 together. And that's where we have Helm version 2. And that started before Kubernetes, or the CNCF existed, and before Kubernetes moved into there. And so Helm went into the CNCF with Kubernetes and other things that went along with it. And after that, of course, we had Helm version 2, and then we had this massive growth. And I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. But Helm version 2 had all of this growth, and we learned a lot. Because along the way, we talked to you, and people like you who are out in the community using Helm, dealing with the problems in the day in and day out, and working through that. And Helm during that time was up against other tools. There were other package managers at the time. KPM was one that had a lot of investment and had a lot of good features in it. But Helm grew to be the popular package manager for Kubernetes. And eventually we grew to have our own summit and start work on version 3. We had enough to have a conference of our own, just like some of the other conferences that have been going on for the sub-projects, even though it was just a sub-project within Kubernetes. And so, of course, when you grow large enough, we decided, why not take it to be a full CNCF project to help us continue to grow and scale and solve our problems. In fact, when we went to the CNCF and we joined in, you're actually going to see this ordering up here is the ordering based on contributions from about 2 weeks ago. And of course, Kubernetes is at the front. It has the most contributors, the most contributions, and surprisingly, gRPC is way behind it, but gRPC, Helm, Prometheus, and I think FluentD are all very close together in number of contributors. Thousands of people contribute in some form or another. And so you see Helm entered. It broke off of Kubernetes, entered into CNCF, and it was one of the most contributed to projects in there. As part of that growth, we have the public charts repository, which is where you can go download community charts curated and managed by the Kubernetes community. And in 1 month from the summer, I went and grabbed the statistics, we had more than 57 million package downloads, and that was from more than 40,000 unique IP addresses. There are tools to display packages. There are mirrors for people who want to mirror it in their on-prem situations or to have it local or part of their CI tool chains. Then there's other automation tools that grab them, scan them, and do things like that. So it all contributes to it, but that's a lot of people using Helm. And that's why we went to the CNCF. That's a lot to scale. We have a lot of maintainers. We have a lot of users, and there were things that we needed. Support with conferences. We organized our first conference on its own. Right? How do we figure out and make chart sharing better? And you saw a little bit of that in the keynote this morning. And then how do we get direct access to the CNCF team to support us? Because they spent most of their time supporting Kubernetes. And so that's the reason we had to move to the CNCF, because Helm is achieving a lot of growth, because it turns out we're trying to build something useful, and hopefully we're able to do that for you. And then, of course, Helm is a package manager. I'm going to break this down a little bit, but it's to easily share, consume, and manage applications defined by Kubernetes resources. So what is easy? Easy is about experience, right? Kubernetes can be hard. And we're going to see more of that because we're going to have examples here in a minute, and we're going to look through certain situations. But Kubernetes can be hard, especially have to deal with a lot of manifests, maybe things you're not familiar with that you need to deploy, because there's business logic in it, right? If you're going to use a database, you have to know the business logic of a database in order to fit that into running in Kubernetes and running efficiently at scale or with backups and things of that nature. And so how do you make that work? And that can be hard. And so one of the things we did was we looked at things like roles. Who are different types of folks, and how do we help solve problems for you to make that easy and to make it simple? Then there's the whole idea of applications, right? Kubernetes looks at things in terms of resources. You might have a deployment or a stateful set or a secret or a config map or an ingress. You're going to have a lot of these different things. But when we think about things in terms of applications, it's a lot different than thinking in terms of resources. You might increment a whole application together rather than small parts. You think of it as a bundle of resources, and then how do you control it? How do you manage it? How do you version control it? How do you deal with the different parts of that? And so when you think about applications, it's kind of a different unit of measure. And of course, where some things in Kubernetes have the ability to do rollbacks and have versions, other things don't. So how do you do that with the assets that don't? And then how do you do that when you're talking about a package as a whole or a group of things as a whole? And so we looked at these kinds of things of how do you deal with applications this way. And of course, we like to share. We're an open source. We share libraries. If you look at things like Debian and package management things, we love to share our packages and then reuse them. In Linux, I can't remember the last time I installed MySQL or Maria. It's always apt-get install or yum install for it because I get other people's knowledge on how to do that. And so we like to share and we like to consume. And then we've got to do things like manage, like how do you upgrade, how do you update, how do you make those kinds of changes? And so we looked at a package manager as helping enable this whole experience, and of course trying to make it easy and simple. But then we got to look at how does a package manager fit with the other tools around it. So if we think about maybe an operating system package manager, a lot of times you'll have a configuration manager at the top, and then it uses package managers. If you use Ansible or Chef or Puppet, you might have that at the top, and then you might use apt or yum package management. Then you got binaries and config and operating systems, things like that, right? And this even relates to things like programming languages. If you're using NPM, that might sit at the configuration management layer, but with package management, you've got your package JSON, you've got your source, it's running in Node. You've got that kind of environment of these layers. And I touched on a little bit here, but this is where you would do with a typical maybe Linux setup where you're doing these kinds of things. And you've got your configuration that goes in Etsy, your ELF binaries, because I'm figuring GNU Linux, and you've got these different parts that all work together. Well, Helm kind of fits into that same space, right? With Helm, Helm is the package manager layer. And images are those binaries that you have to run. And you might have many of them in order to orchestrate something together. And then there's Kubernetes objects that describe how do you do that. In fact, in some situations, you might even say operators can fit alongside these as a third option that can be bundled up in a package. And then the environment they run in is Kubernetes. And at the top, I put configuration managers. Now, you could use things like Ansible. In fact, Ansible has a Helm plugin, and there are those who just call out to the Helm binary to do it as well there. And so Ansible and those other systems can also work with it. But these are a few that have grown up around the Helm environment that people use. And so that's why I point these out. But you can actually insert a configuration management layer on top of it to get everything to work together. So that way you can reproducibly do things to your dev environment, staging, production, multiple production environments. And how do you scale that out while still keeping a manageable package? So let's look at an example. We'll look at WordPress. It seems to be the perennial example because people like it. And in our case, you've got things like a database, you've got an application, and you've got questions you want to answer if you're going to install it in different places. Do I have TLS enabled? If I'm in my local development environment, maybe not, so I don't have to deal with certificate errors in my browser. If I'm running it in production or a staging environment, maybe. And it may even be wired up to other things like Let's Encrypt for your certs or something like that. But there's a lot going on. And of course, you've got a database. You've just got different parts you have to work with. And so what happens when you combine all those together to do this? Well, we've done this in one of our repositories. And to go deploy this, you're going to run into about 13 Kubernetes objects. And of course, they're grouped around the database and WordPress. How do you manage that? Well, that's where Helm comes in and charts. And so if you were going to go do this, right, in Helm, it's actually a pretty straightforward thing in order to break this down. Here's a command. Helm install stable WordPress. In this case, I'm actually setting a parameter to pass in. So if I were going to go install, say, MySQL on Linux, one of the things it's going to ask me for is what is the root password I'm installing it with? Because it has to collect information. In fact, Debian packages and package managers have long had the ability to collect that information at runtime to pass into the package so it knows how to configure things. Helm does that too. And so in this case, we're collecting a piece of information to pass into the package to know how to do it. The stable here is the stable community repo, and WordPress is the unit, the package we're installing from there, the chart. And what do you get if you do that? You get a WordPress site. And hi CloudNativeCon on it, because that's what was passed in, and it knew what to do with that. So what's really happening under the hood here is you have a WordPress chart. And the chart is the package, and it depends on a Maria database chart in this case. WordPress needs something MySQL compliant. In our case, we're using MariaDB. And the MariaDB chart has a bunch of Kubernetes manifests in it. And those manifests have an interface where you can pass things into it. And then the WordPress chart depends on the Maria chart. And so when Helm goes to deal with it, it says, okay, I've got WordPress, I've got Maria at these versions. How do I go install that? I get that installed, I get that working, then I go install WordPress, and I wire them together because there's clean interfaces to go ahead and do that. And so Helm knows how to have these dependencies, bring them together. Dependencies, we'll talk more about that in a minute, but it should have a familiar feel. So in Helm, the few things you probably need to know as general terms is there's Helm, which is the command line client. Tiller is it runs in your cluster. It's like an early precursor to the modern controllers you have. It works like a controller running in your cluster that does a bunch of the management there. Then there's a repository. It's kind of like a container repository, but it's for sharing and storing charts and sticking charts in and getting them out. And a chart is our unit of a package. So let's look at what a unit of a package looks like. And we'll look at the WordPress to continue this example. So up on the screen here, we've got a few packages. The README describes what's going on, but then there's the chart YAML, and that describes the package. It holds metadata. Is there an icon? Is there a description? Are there keywords? Does it have maintainers? A lot of this stuff, if you've done package JSON or some of these others, you're actually going to see those same kinds of fields in there. So you can deal with how do you manage the package? How do you find out details? How do you find out the website for the package so you can learn more information? It's all encapsulated in there. Then you've got the requirements files. Requirements lock and YAML. This will look a lot like your requirements definition in NPM or Glide or DEP or PHP Composer or many of the other systems. It has the same feel, the same functionality. It was designed by people who've done package management with these other tools. And so it has that same feel, except it's in a YAML file rather than JSON. Then there's the templates directory. Helm is known for working with templates and templatizing Kubernetes objects in order to pass things in order to generate them with logic and things like that. And then there's values. Values is free-form YAML to describe passing properties in with defaults that you can use inside. And we'll look at that again in a minute. But it's the ability to have an interface where here's where you collect that information, whether it's a database password or a name like hi, CloudNativeCon. Here is where you describe that and pass that in that can then be used inside of your templates. So in the templates directory, we have a whole bunch of things. And these are mostly templates. The notes.txt file is a template. That's notes that print out after you installed it. If you've used Homebrew on Mac, you might be familiar with how it spits out some notes on descriptions. It's the same thing. The helpers TPL file is template helper functions, and it comes with a few in a default chart when you use Helm to create it, or you can go ahead and create your own and add them there. And then the rest of them are going to look like other Kubernetes objects. There's a deployment, there's an ingress, there's a PVC, there's a service. These are other templatized Kubernetes objects, and we'll look at them in a minute. But one of the other things we have here is we have tests. And you can actually have and do tests that sit alongside your other stuff. Now, when you go install a package, they're not there by default. There's actually commands to run that. But in this case, like this test here, that makes sure something's up and running, it spins up a pod right alongside everything else, and it knows how to talk to them. So it spins up the pod, it runs the tests, it collects the information, and it tears it down, and then Helm is able to relay that to you. And so testing is actually built into the flow using containers and Kubernetes objects in the very same flow as it is to build things for Kubernetes or a chart. So if we were going to go take that, we could say Helm install stable WordPress, -- name WordPress. And here I'm giving it a name. If you don't pass in a name to call it, Helm will automatically generate one. And then to run the test, I just say Helm test WordPress. And it's going to go run the test and give me the feedback. But that's how you can run tests. On the community charts repo, we actually do this as part of CI. When something gets to a certain place in there, we will install a chart into a cluster. We will run the tests on it, get the results, make sure it passed. So let's look inside a template file. Inside a template file, you're going to see a lot of things here. So this kind of looks like a secret. But what you're actually going to see here is certain things. So if values ingress enabled. Well, in that values YAML file we looked at a little while ago, there is a YAML structure of ingress, and underneath it, it has enabled, and it's a Boolean. So it can be true or false. And so is it enabled? If it is, continue with this file. If not, skip it, don't generate anything, right? And then in this case, because it's dealing with ingress, and ingress, this is for TLS, it's got secrets, that can actually be an array. And so we range over that, and then those things become available. And so in this case, it creates a secret for each thing. And then within that, you're going to see where it actually creates based on $ and release name and service. So it actually goes and creates this. So the .certificate and .key are elements on that array for each property. And so it iterates over and it inserts those things, and it's a secret. So there's a template function to base 64 encode it, because we've extended the Go TPL language with a whole bunch of functions to help you. And it generates it. And so this right here is able to automatically generate it. And what you do, if you're a user of it, is you just pass in an array of the details into the chart. And it knows now how to generate those Kubernetes objects and put them in the right place with the right names, packaging them together, and doing the work for you. And of course, when you take all of these files, the templates, the tests, the description, and everything going on, all of that gets bundled up into a tarball. And in this case here, you've got the name of the package, its semantic version. So if you look at it, you can see what it is. You can open it up and you can inspect it. You can do those things. And the way to actually convert it is really simple. Helm package, if you're in the root directory, otherwise it's the path to it. And a nice little tip here is if you're into signing, right, you want to be able to sign and then verify later using PGP because you want to know who it came from and validate that, you can actually add a -- sign flag to it. And then many of the other commands, like Helm install, have a -- verify flag. And so along with this, while it's simple, you can actually layer in that cryptographic verification along the way if that's something you're interested in. So here's a handful of other commands, because it should look pretty simple. So you can do Helm repo add. This should look a lot like git remote add, right? To add a new repository. In this example, it's the Incubator is the name we give it, but you can give it any name you want, and then you just specify a repository location. If you want to fetch it locally, right? You don't want to install it, but you want to fetch it from a repository and inspect it, you can use Helm fetch. In fact, if you want to, there's a version flag you can pass in and say, give me this specific version. And so you can get old versions from that repository. If you want to install it, again, that's Helm install. If you want to update a running instance, maybe you've changed the values you want in it. Maybe there's an update that works with semantic versioning to what you have, and you want to update to a new version. Maybe we have WordPress 3.3.0, and now we're looking at 3.4.0, and we want to update. The update command does it. It does it all together. So your secrets will be updated. And your secrets will be updated in a way where a new secret's created with the new information, and when Kubernetes spins down, the old deployments and stateful sets that relied on the old one, when those are gone, it'll clean up that old secret as well for you. So it handles your upgrades, and of course, there's actually a rollback command, because sometimes you want to roll back. You deployed something, oops, we broke something. And in this case, you can roll back, and it'll roll back the thing as a whole to the old values, to the old configuration, to the old version, and it'll make that work. Because we're looking at the ability to manage and to deal with upgrades and downgrades and all those things. Now there's more to Helm than just the Helm CLI that we walked through. There's a whole bunch more going on in the Helm ecosystem. The first thing we talked about a little bit is the stable and incubator charts. These are community curated. There's hundreds of them now. Stable is the ones that are generally stable, and you can trust and rely on them. The incubator ones are ones people are testing. That repo is not added by default, but if you install Helm version 2 today, you're going to get the stable charts repo there, just available for you out of the box, and the ability to access it. And that's where many of the charts that people use are today. And if you want to get a template or a place to start and extend, that's a great place to look at it. We've got review documents, we've got common patterns, things that you can learn from, things that you can use in your own charts. There's the Helm Hub, which we announced this morning, which is the ability to not just look in stable and incubator, but to look at many other repositories. When we first launched this, we had partners who help us with Helm, Bitnami and JFrog. We had some open source projects like Keel that don't have an association, but they're doing and sharing their projects and the ability to run them through Helm chart repositories. And we're going to expand this, because if you click on that About link, you're going to learn about how you can add your own repositories to this. In fact, this is one of those projects where it's fresh and the UX and UI can use some work. And so this is a great place for UX and UI people to come join in and help us continue to grow that. But this is one of the projects that we maintain, because Helm is thought of also as a platform, not just a CLI. We don't want to be that NPM central repository. We really want to enable you. And things like the stable and incubator repositories, we have our own workflow for the way we do things. And that doesn't work for everyone. And if we're honest, and you look at the number of pull requests and updates, it's actually grown to the point where it's not scalable for us to curate everything anymore and use that. And so the ability is to enable you and all of the other Helm folks out there to have your own repositories, your own workflows. And we're going to continue to look at CI tools and processes to help you do that as you do it. Because if we don't have to spend our time curating stable and incubator as much, we can spend more time building tools to help you automate and scan and test your own repositories where you can be in control. And the Helm Hub helps you share and find those. And so that's one of the projects we have going. And this, the UI is built on top of Monocular. And Monocular is, you can install it yourself for your own repositories. It was the foundation for KubeApps that was long run by Bitnami and still is. And Monocular is that tool. You can run it on-prem, point it to your charts repos, and have a visual interface with commands and be able to see, here's what we've got available for us. Now, if you want to run a chart repository of your own, Helm out of the box has the ability to create a repository. It's a static repository. You can push to a flat web server or put into object storage, things like that. If you want something with more juice, more power, a dynamic server that can do these things, Chart Museum is a project under Helm that does that. In fact, Chart Museum is bundled with Harbor, one of the other CNCF projects, to provide chart repositories for Harbor users, because there's a lot of different ways that you can consume and use that. And then there's tools to help you, right? I just talked about that a minute ago with running your own repositories. And one of the tools we have is called chart testing. A pretty straightforward name. It's what we use when we test the stable and incubator charts. It's what we ourselves run. It's containerized. It allows us to do static analysis of our charts to look for schemas, things like that. Does it pass Helm commands? Does it validate schemas? Does it follow good practices? And it's got a lot of flags you can pass in, and you can run it yourself on your own repositories. Because even though we've run it, we've packaged it as a container. You can go run it in Circle or Travis or Jenkins or other CI tools, and you can run it yourself too. In fact, many people do that today already. And then there's the ecosystem, because the Helm project does so much, but we've actually had ways to extend. And I talked a little bit about that with Chart Museum. We want to go beyond just the core CLI. And a lot of this, we want to set people up to be successful and have space to solve their own problems and do their own things. So we're going to name a few things. Helm actually has plugins. So like Git has plugins, Helm has plugins. And some of these are things like Helm S3 or GCS or Helm GitHub. These tools actually help you run repositories in those places, right? So Helm S3 knows how to do S3 private repositories and work with Helm. And there's a lot of those things. There's tillerless Helm v2, which will let you run Helm v2 without having to deal with tiller running in your cluster, because some people want that. There's Helm GPG, which will use your system's GPG to do signing and verification of charts and try to make that process easier. And these are just to name a few. Then there's things like supporting tools around it. There's a drone plugin. There's KubeApps. There's Landscaper. There's Chartify. There's all these projects that are supporting tools around Helm. And then there's services, right? Quay has the app registry where you can put your Helm charts. CodeFresh has managed Helm repositories. There's a whole bunch of services that are growing up around it, and we want to enable those. In fact, these repositories, like those from CodeFresh, you can have those in the hub because we're trying to give you the opportunity to use the services and still expose things. And of course, if you want to find out more about what's in the ecosystem, right, we have a website for that. You can go to that website and you can learn more about what's in the ecosystem and how to use it. So where's Helm going? I said I'd answer that. So the first thing is Helm v3. All right, so Helm, we take semantic version very seriously. I know Kubernetes sometimes like breaks and changes APIs between minor versions. Helm tries very hard not to. And when Helm v2 came out over a year ago, long over a year ago, we said, all right, we're not going to break our APIs. We're going to follow semantic versioning. We will add features. But we've learned a lot over time. We've learned a lot from interacting with you, seeing what y'all do and other Helm users do. And so now we're looking to make breaking changes, to improve on Helm, to refactor things, to bring in some new Kubernetes things. I mean, when you think about it, when Helm first launched, secrets weren't a thing in Kubernetes when Helm v2 came out. And so things have come a long way. And so this gives us an opportunity to do breaking changes to make Helm better for all of you. But along the way, we want to carry almost everyone forward. If you do a chart today, 99.9% of the time our goal is to make that work. There's edge cases where we'll have a hard time, and I don't want to talk about them because they're secret features inside of Helm. We've discovered that like nobody's using. If you scour all of GitHub, if you look everywhere, you won't find anybody publicly using it, but they're in there because we've got some of those things. And so if you want to learn more about where all of this is going, there's a Helm deep dive on Thursday at 3:40. We'll dive deep into where Helm is going and the ecosystem and some of the things that are going on. We actually were lucky enough to get 2 slots back to back. And so the first half of this is going to be an overview from Matt Butcher, as I talked about earlier, and Adam Reese, another one of the core maintainers, giving that deep dive. And then we're going to have a working session afterwards where we can talk about what's going on and bring questions and have exchanges and things like that. Another thing, CNCF graduation. We're going to push for graduation probably in the next year. And one of the things that I put up here, so if you are part of the CNCF, they do a lot of things for you. And one of the things here is they've got something called core infrastructure. They actually make sure you as a project are following a lot of good best practices. Now anybody can do this, right? You don't have to be a CNCF project to do the core infrastructure stuff. You can just go to the website and you can get a badge, but they walk you through. Do you have 2-factor authentication on your GitHub repos? Do you have security contacts? All of these things that if you're going to be a stable, mature, and healthy project, they walk you through. And we're going to go through that. And we're going to go through a lot of other things that help push us to graduation and help make sure that we're a good project and we've got our stuff together. We want to grow the hub. We want to see how we can grow it or advance it. Yes, you got a question?
Yes. APIs. Can you do all those things you showed with the CLI through an API?
The Helm?
Yeah.
You mean like a REST API or a web API?
Like if I want to write code to do all that, what you did in CLI, can I do that through an SDK or?
Yes. Okay, so I'll break here for a question real quick. Yes, you can. There's a couple of ways to do it. Tiller has a gRPC server, and the Helm client and other tools can talk to it and have those things and interact with it that way. Some folks have actually written a REST front end that can work in front of that. I'm forgetting the name of the project right now, but you can put a REST front end in front of Tiller and do it that way. Helm also has a package directory, and so the Helm client imports its own package directory to do that stuff. And people will write other tools that also import that package directory. It's one of those things where we take semantic version seriously because we know people are importing our Go code base and using it to write their own applications. And then you can do the same thing programmatically by importing that package thing. And there are companies that have built their own tooling and management around that, doing just that. So yes, you can. All right, so if you want to get involved, there's a few ways you can get involved. One, you can attend a meeting. We have meetings twice a week. Tuesdays is where we talk charts, just charts. The repos, building them yourself. Every other week we have an office hours where you can just ask questions. If you've got an issue, if you've got a problem, you can come talk to us about charts. We're happy to. We also, in those meetings and the other weeks, we have more formal meetings where we talk about the hub, where we talk about CI around charts and building tools for it. But you can come to those. And then on Thursdays, we have kind of the Helm Developer Weekly Call. And that's where we talk about where Helm is going, whether it's version 3 or what we've done in the last week or some crazy idea we've got and we want to bounce it off and discuss it. And it's a place where the core developers get together and anybody else can come and introduce themselves and see what's going on and even learn where they can get involved. We've had lots of people do that even recently to become involved in even helping us with version 3 now. You can file an issue. About half of our open issues right now, for example, are support requests of people asking questions. And we don't close those until the issue is resolved or it's been unresponsive for a very long time. Because we want to make sure it's resolved, and if somebody goes searching for it, they can find an answer sometime. So that's a way. You can contribute to code and docs. We love contributions and extending the community. And you can learn out how to do all of this on the Helm community site. Like Kubernetes has a community repo, we do too. There is the meeting, if you want to know when meetings are, there's an iCal feed, there's, find out how to contribute. You can get all of those details there on how to get involved. And so with that, are there any questions? I think I have 3 minutes or something for questions. Are there any questions? Yes? So the question was, is Tiller going away in version 3? The answer is yes, and it is already out of the version 3 code base. For those of you who might be curious, we figured out how to do everything we need to do without running a server-side component, which is less complication, less stress on your cluster, less dealing with certain namespace issues and RBAC things you might want to do in some situations. So we figured out how to make it go away and simplify it.